Hey guys, welcome back to the Mind Body broadcast with Austin and Marty. And today we are going to do part 2 of our diet series.
Diet series.
Right, the diet series. And let's see, what did we do last time? We did keto.
Intermittent fasting and keto. You got
Yep,
it.
yep. So if you missed part 1, by the time this one comes out, part 1, I'm sure will be up.
Sure.
And we essentially are going over different dieting modalities, if you will, and talking about when they might be used, when you might not want to use them, pros and cons, so on and so forth. Because as most of you know, Marty and I do not subscribe to one particular style.
Yeah, we're not married to anything. Yeah.
Right. So what did I say what we were going to do today? I don't think I
No,
did.
you didn't. So yeah, which one
Go
do you
for
want to tackle first? Let's start right out with the protein sparing modified fasts. Let's go with that.
Okay. And that was that originally a Lyle McDonald?
100% Lyle McDonald.
Yeah.
Baby. Yep. I think
Yeah.
I think the book was it the Rapid Fat Loss Handbook.
Yeah, old school Lyle.
Old school for sure. Old school Lyle. Yep. Way back, I want to say 8.
Was it that old?
Oh, it's something along those lines. I remember buying that. Maybe not. I think the ketogenic diet was there. Wait, you know what? Here, you keep talking. I'm going to find. I think I'm looking at the book right now.
Yeah, because I see it float around on the internet some. I don't know if I'd have to ask Lyle, but if it's like actually, if Lyle was like the first person to start it or do it, I'm not exactly sure. But essentially what it is, it's and I know it's used in the medical community too, or at least it was kind of. It's basically extreme caloric restriction to, it's not going to be a long-term diet. It's going to be for essentially it's basically as close as you're going to get to fasting without fasting, because you're essentially restricting 2 complete macronutrient groups, more or less. It's going to be essentially all protein, very low carb, high protein, low fat. Your fats are going to come from pretty much just lean protein sources. So you could add in like a small amount of omega-3 fatty acids, but other than that, we're talking pretty much trace fats and trace carbohydrate. And what's interesting now, and I was thinking about this the other day, is this might not necessarily be a very low calorie diet, but people have been doing the carnivore diet, lately, or at least I don't know if anymore. I mean, I know it was kind of hot there for a bit. That's kind of a version of a protein sparing diet, just because that's all they eat, though they eat a lot more fat in that diet. So this diet, depending on your size, is going to be, even for a male, potentially sub 1,000 calorie diet. I know the original one was something like 800 or less calories, something obscenely low. And again, it's going to kind of depend on what is your body weight, what's your muscle mass. Essentially what we're doing is just eating enough protein to spare muscle protein, right? To have enough for protein synthesis, to retain muscle tissue, to recover from exercise. So outside of that, you are not getting any type of macronutrients. The plan typically calls for refeeding. You're going to see different suggestions on that. I'm trying to think off the top of my head what Lyle's original suggestion was, but something like 2 weeks or something around there. Obviously, the leaner you are and the lower calorie you are, the more susceptible you're going to be to basically just like feeling like garbage and potentially losing muscle mass, right? So, yeah. I do. Well, it's funny enough because basically this is pretty much where I end up in all my preps, and I don't necessarily call it the PSMF diet. It's just in bodybuilding circles, you might just hear it called the protein veggie diet.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
The protein and dust.
Right. And that's what it is. I mean, that's essentially what it is. And it's, I don't even know if the original really advocated any type of vegetables or not. I'd have to go look, to be
Yeah,
completely honest.
I did find them here, and so it was
Okay.
2005. What was and
Okay,
then
well, that's still 15 years.
you got it, and then the
Yeah.
other one was the Stubborn Fat Solution. Was
Right.
kind of the
Yep.
was kind of the coupling book that went to it here. Yeah, and it says right. I'll read it right from the back here. It says this is perfect. So it's when to use a crash diet. So we'll call it appropriate crash diet is what another
Sure.
thing you could term it into. And also it's how to incorporate free meals, refeeds, and even a full diet break into the crash diet. How to move back into maintenance eating, which we can talk about that in another podcast as well too, after the crash diet is over. And then how to use the crash diet to kickstart a more modern diet. So yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to emphasize here on this podcast is when is this appropriate? What tools do you need to be able to do this and what to set up? So one of the things that the book and no, we don't get any kickback from good old Lyle McDonald on his on his books. We don't get anything of that. Lyle, I actually do very much so enjoy Lyle. He is a mainstay in science for nutrition. I would say 100% for sure. The ketogenic diet, that book, even the protein book, all of his books, if you want to check them out at bodyrrecomposition.com, go for it. If you're super nerds like Austin and I, they are pretty much like they're the books on a lot of this stuff. They go over the pros and cons, kind of like what we're doing on the podcast, but much more in depth and in detail if you're looking into any kind of those things. But I will say definitely if you're looking into this form of diet where it is exactly as Austin said, the protein and veggie diet for the most part this is when supplementation has to become a thing, ladies and gentlemen, is that now you are not getting from carbohydrates and fats the minerals and vitamins that you would usually get from your diet. So then you will have to add things in. I know definitely he recommended, I believe, magnesium. I know he's a big fan of fish oil and a couple other vitamins along those lines.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know Lyle doesn't talk a ton about supplements anyhow, other than just some basic. I know he's talked about like fat loss, like yohimbine and maybe ephedrine and things like that. But yeah, this is definitely a situation where you're going to probably want to supplement with like something even like a multivitamin. I know a lot of people say multivitamins are stupid, and
this is a time when they're not.
You're right. Again, you might want to make sure you're getting a higher quality source that has like some actual bioavailable multivitamins. So not your cheap one from the grocery store. Okay.
That could be a podcast in and of itself there, Austin, is quality control of supplements. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, we'll talk about that later. Definitely.
So how would you go about even setting up a diet like this? Well, there's a few things to consider. Well, what are your caloric needs? Now, obviously, it's going to be pretty easy to undershoot your current maintenance when you basically take away 2 entire macronutrient groups.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah. It's obviously a very easy way to incorporate a calorie deficit because you're just eating protein essentially. So how can you do it? Well, I've done it a couple different ways. I know in Lyle's book he has some pretty specific types of requirements in terms of protein and how much you should eat.
Sure.
And but the problem is it's really going to come down to what does this person need specifically. If we are in a extreme type of situation where I need to use this type of diet or fat loss, like a last ditch effort type of thing, I'm going to basically have to just put them on enough protein to spare muscle mass.
Yeah.
And that's going to be, if we look at the research, it's not very much. Now I know in research, we're talking something like even clear down to like 0.8 grams per kilo or a gram per kilo, or that's very, very low. In this type of diet, I'm normally going to suggest a little bit higher than that because again, we have a couple things going on. We're in probably a large calorie deficit. You're also, if you're very lean, then you're also going to be more susceptible to eating muscle tissue at that point. So I'm normally going to suggest a little bit higher. If I'm using this type of diet, on a lean individual, I'm going to go probably a little higher protein, like 1.5 grams, maybe even 2 grams per pound type of thing.
For sure.
And there's some other benefits there too. So obviously, protein being the most satiating macronutrient, that does help. It's slow to digest. That does help.
Yep.
Also, it has a high thermic effect, right? Especially if any of you have read any of the stuff on protein overfeeding and some of the effects on that might have on an individual. You're going to get a little bit of that here if you're going very high protein. And I mean, you also need a fuel source of some kind. So, I mean, essentially at this point, your body only has a couple things it can burn. It's going to go through the very rigorous process of converting this protein down to glucose, or it's going to eat fat, fat circulating in the blood after it liberates it from fat cells, or it's going to eat muscle tissue, and you don't really want it to eat muscle tissue. So you will have some ketones. You probably still produce a little bit of ketones in that type of situation, but you want enough protein there in case your body needs to use those amino acids. You will. Have you ever done this type of diet?
Yes, absolutely have.
Okay. Yeah, I assumed as much. I know you aren't most metabolically blessed person either. So.
Oh, exactly. So yeah, I've had to dive into that. I believe my calories got to be around 960 at one point, which were pretty much pure protein, right? I definitely did this dust and protein diet for sure. And I will go ahead.
No, you keep going.
Yeah, and so what I found was, yes, it worked, and this is definitely tying in exactly what we're talking about here. The pros and cons of it is that or when should you use it is when you're mentally ready for it. Because if you're not mentally ready to have this kind of diet, then it's not for you. Because yes, like I even love that Lyle did put right on the back of his book there, crash diet. And so as soon as people hear crash diet, they get scared about it and things like this and say, yeah, of course, this is not something that's sustainable. The protein sparing modified fast is not something that you would use for any kind of gross length of time by any stretch at all. Like 4-6 weeks maximum. Even that is a very big stretch to pull off something like this without then having to incorporate at least some form of refeed or slipping into maintenance, or at least adding in one of those other macronutrients back in, either carbs or fat into the diet, because it's flat out not healthy. Because that's the whole terms of supplements, is you are supplementing them into your diet. So therefore you need to get those sources from. It's always better to get your vitamins and your minerals from food. It's the form that the body accepts well, much better than something that's just been synthesized in a lab. It's just better for you. It's not the best. It's not the best. Actually, it's probably the worst diet in terms of longevity by any stretch of the imagination. But also, yeah, being prepared to know that you're going to not feel the best. You're not going to have the most amount of energy. I know that Lyle recommends, exactly as Austin said there, ephedrine and caffeine, because you are no longer using calories as your energy source. You are now using caffeine as your energy source, and you will need that, right? Because people forget, and I even forget on a daily basis, that caffeine is not your energy source. It's your food. That's how you should be getting your gas in your tank, which is you. It's not caffeine. Coffee's not what should be running you. But yeah, knowing when to implement that diet when should you maybe think about doing this diet, if your mentality is, okay, I am not going to do this diet forever. It's not going to be something that is sustainable. But if I'm looking to lose some fat pretty quickly, and I'm setting it up correctly, and so exactly before a contest, maybe you're doing a vacation, and everyone's going to probably think inside their head, wow, these guys are advocating crash diets. Are you serious? Well, again, this is something that I had a coach when I did it, and I would say that was monumentally helpful for that. I needed that, to have that support system to lean back on. Because if you come off of this protein sparing modified fast and you don't have the systems, the mental systems, the emotional systems in place, or your habits in place, or know to plan how to go out of it, yeah, that can be very emotionally damaging, and you could pretty much screw up everything you were trying to do with the diet to begin with.
Yep, 100%. It's not and the psychological part of it would be a valid concern right off the bat. Like that's
100%.
yeah. And we're kind of talking about more last ditch type of fat loss here, but you can use it in other situations because it's actually not a terrible thing to use. Like, let's say I have used it. And I'm not saying this is something I would do all the time because I'm not someone that likes to like instill this extreme restriction short-term thing as like a fix. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Good point.
I don't really like to do that, but I do have certain individuals I work with that I know are very mentally grounded and stable, and I know that it's not a problem with them. Right?
Yeah, grounded is the perfect term for it, and that's exactly it. Because I've had people come to me, let's say, "Hey, Marty, I've got a photo shoot in 3-4 weeks. Can I? What do you think I should do?" And either if I know this person or they've worked with me before, and I go, "Okay, what do you got going on in your life after? What do you got going on in your life right now? Like if you were, let's say, if you know you're going to be like for instance, my example, I'm moving right now. That's the last thing in the world that I want to be doing because A, I'm not going to have any energy for my move. B, it's probably going to be too stressful and hectic on my CNS, let alone my happiness system, we'll call it, to do that.
Right.
And then I would just burn out, and then I would probably screw it all up and end up friggin' having a week or two of refeeds that I don't need after that anyways.
Yeah, no, 100%. And they're kind of going back to the advantages part. Well, if you're in a situation like that where you've been eating in a surplus for a while and you maybe have a little more body fat, it's a really easy thing to do. It's a great thing to do, honestly, because let's think about what's going to happen. Well, when we go into a deficit for a long period of time, we start to form these adaptions. Our metabolism slows down. Our hunger signals get all messed up. Thyroid's compromised, all this stuff. So if we can do something that's shorter, it doesn't really allow a lot of time for those adaptions to occur to any, really extreme extent. So you could pretty much starve someone for 2 to 3 weeks without a whole lot of repercussions.
Yeah. Go ahead.
But when I say that, I want the right context. They say that is the person that has no pre-existing metabolic issues whatsoever. Right.
Yeah. Because exactly. If you have anything, if you know that you're hypothyroid, or if you know that you are, anything along those lines, or you're prone to fainting, for example, that would be something that you would not want to do at all. To really kind of piggyback on what you just said there, what really came to my head is if you know that you're starting to become very insulin resistant or your blood sugar's out of whack, perfect. This is a great thing to do to really kind of get that back under control again. Because that's something like and I was just having a chat with one of my old friends and clients, Jason Norton. He was saying that he did not know that he's type 2 diabetic, and there you go. And guess what? He was not making any kind of gains. He was banging his head against the wall, eating way too much food, and nothing was happening. And his blood sugar, I don't know what the conversion would be out there for the US, but for the Canadian system that we have here, he was 36.7 was what his blood sugar was when he tested it once, which is,
wow.
I know, exactly.
Wow.
That's just,
I know what that converts to.
Yeah, and exactly. And if you were to see the guy, Austin, he's in shape. Like he's a lean fella. Like the pictures you just put up today of yourself, he's leaner than that, and he's trying to gain weight.
Nice.
Yeah, and so then as soon as he got on the proper insulin protocol, he was able to, and he dropped his calories. I think he was doing 5,000. He dropped it down to like 3,800, and now he's gaining weight again. So now that was probably just chronic overuse of, and so what I'm saying is that something like a protein sparing modified fast could have ended up helping him there, right?
Yeah. And let's take someone like me, for example. I'm eating a ton of food. Now I don't have to really throw out my calorie numbers because that's just relevant to me and not anyone else. Yep. But if you've been in a long off season, you've gained a lot of muscle mass, and you've probably gained a little bit of fat, and you've been eating at a surplus for a long period of time, you're going to have no problem doing this type of diet for a couple of weeks.
You'll be mentally welcoming it.
Yep. I would love it. I dream I dream of a protein sparing modified fast right now.
Yep, yeah, exactly. When everyone else is dreaming of cookies and pizza and ice cream, you're dreaming of the dust and protein diet.
It's like, oh my God, what I would do to just not eat. And but yeah, so that would be another situation where it would work really well.
Be very viable. Yeah. If you're especially if you're finding like you're even if, let's say, your blood sugar is fine, you've tested it, but let's say you're stuck. Let's say you've been trying to like gain weight or whatever, and you're let's just throw in a number there. You're 252 pounds. Next week you're 252 pounds. The next week you're 252 pounds. Diet, your appetite sucks, or it's going backwards in terms of now you're getting more stuffed, or you feel more full before you're done your meals. That's a really good time to implement something like this for even something like 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I was thinking too while you were saying that, one other situation where I would use it occasionally would be for digestive issues.
Absolutely, good point.
So I think we probably mentioned that on the fasting portion, because of course fasting is a great way to let your GI rest. That's no better way than that.
Okay, so yeah, a time to not do this would be, as we were kind of alluding to there, would be if you're I don't know, wanted to go you're trying to get a new boyfriend, a new girlfriend, and you're wanting to look good on a date or something like that. It's again, that would mean that you're not mentally prepared for that. And I have seen this unfortunately, or I know that girls call it the revenge body. They break up with their boyfriend, or they they find out that they've been cheated on or something along those lines, and they go, I need to get my revenge body. Before you know it, they're going on the protein and dust diet. And as soon as they find someone, or it doesn't matter if they do or not, that's not sustainable, and that's not the mentality that you should be going to use this for. So that would be something to not use it when. Also, of course, if you are very prone to any form of eating disorder, this is definitely not something I would be very happy or very encouraging to put you on, thanks to, obviously, that's just going to set you up for disaster in those ways.
Yeah, yep, that is basically an emotional response at that point. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like like the people that gosh, I hope there's probably some of these people listening, maybe the people that want to use a bunch of performance enhancing substances for their vacation.
Oh, yep.
It's like, what?
Yep.
Like, come on now.
Yep.
You know, then you're going to go home and come off and be unhappy.
Yeah, not only that, but you're also now you're making your immune system and your and everything else very weak, and then you're adding in substances that will be making it even weaker or dangerous. That's not when to use it at all.
No, it's so yeah, again, just kind of recap there.
Yeah,
definitely a diet that would be used for a very mentally stable individual. Also short term. Also should include refeeding every couple weeks, give or take, or even diet breaks. Like, what's interesting about that is mention of diet breaks there, and then you heard diet breaks pop up again in recent years, but he was so far ahead right there with using a diet break.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting. I just realized that, because you don't really hear that term very much until more recently.
Yeah, no, the like Lyle definitely 2005, 15 years it was when he put that term, cool. the full diet break. I know the only other person, and funny enough, they really don't get along too well, is him and Scott Abel. Both are very big fans of the full diet break. Yeah, they just kind of it's kind of funny they both butted heads about a lot of things, because one of them thought that all he was a super supplement, we'll call them, or the enhancement, the PEDs guy, and everyone. But no, both of them are both extremely scientifically oriented people, but they both definitely agree on that the full diet break, regardless of your dieting style, is needed. We should talk about that one another time too.
Yeah.
So I think that's good enough for that one.
The next was carb backloading.
Yeah, let's go with that one.
Have you heard anyone talking about this lately?
It's no, I really haven't. I know it had its time in the sun. What would you say, 3 years ago? Something like that.
So it probably came after what? It came after intermittent fasting.
I was just about to say, I think after intermittent fast, because intermittent fasting was it went like from keto being like kind of the reign supreme to intermittent fasting, and then carb backloading kind of jumped into the spotlight.
And it was the guy I'm trying to think of his name.
Yeah, I'll find it here while you're talking.
I can even think of kind of what he looks like. I just can't remember. I cannot remember the person's name. Anyhow, yeah. So essentially, this was kind of it wasn't necessarily an eating window type of diet. It was a nutrient timing diet. It was a nutrient timing diet that involved, as you can probably figure by the name, loading your carbs and towards the end of the day. So it was like that, kind of irregardless of when you worked out, or regardless of what your day was like. So some of the at least claims were, better insulin sensitivity through the day and better partitioning of nutrients at night. When you eat the carbs, there was also at least some attempt to talk about like circadian patterns and things in the diet.
Sure.
Also, adherence was a big sell on the diet because a lot of people typically eat a lot of carbohydrates at night around their dinner time, or they want to eat with their family, or they have
just eat more food, period.
Right. Or just more food because you're not at work or whatever,
Yeah.
or worked out or whatever. So that, and then also kind of one of the sells was it blended kind of the IIYFM mantra
Definitely,
in there.
Definitely did.
Yeah.
Good, I'm glad you're mentioning that. Yep.
So this was kind of, this had some of the faults that intermittent fasting did too, is because, again, it kind of turned into this game of, oh, I'm only eating carbohydrates in 2 meals today or whatever, and I'm gonna, or one meal maybe, and just how much ridiculous amount of volume can I just load into this meal? So I think the idea of it is good from an adherence standpoint. I just think that I think when you're presenting that to an obsessive group of people, it might not pan out that way.
Yeah. John Kiefer.
Yep. Kiefer. Yep. That was the guy.
Yeah. And even not by no means crapping on the guy, but I did go to carbbackloading.com, and it is pretty funny to see the claims he's making here. So I'm glad we're doing this podcast. He's got
what kind of claims do you make?
Well, he's saying I can now keep my body fat around 6% all year.
Oh, wow.
with minimal effort. And the picture of him, he's definitely around, I would say, maybe 10%.
6%. So he's basically like contest lean all year.
He's contest. He's better than most people we see at a regional and provincial level contest lean all year.
All right.
And yeah, what else are some of the claims here too? Is better for your training, better for your digestion. And he's showing pictures. You can also, he's not really going over too much of, but he's definitely showing pictures of cheesecake and ice cream here. Eat the foods that you crave. And so to succeed, you must eat the foods you've been told to avoid, like pizzas, donuts, pastries, and ice creams. Now, I love you summed that up perfectly. From the people that are the exact kind of people that should be staying away from this, is that because as soon as you are told that you should, or you should be gouging on foods like this, then you'll take away the foods that you should be having as well, such as your good or call them healthy carbohydrates that do include your nutrients, your vitamins, and your minerals. So that's something you should always be aware of, is that these foods are just I think the term is empty calories or nutrient devoid calories, because they are not going to be the things that are going to keep your hair, your skin, your everything basically going the way it should. Your vitamin panel and your mineral panel coming back on your blood work will be doing junk. So that's definitely something to be avoiding of, and that's definitely the what we should be talking about here for sure, is that for carb backloading. So if you've even noticed, it's kind of saying eat your your carbs at nighttime here. So it really is a spin-off or a shoot-off of intermittent fasting if you really
Right.
think about it. So it's just, yeah, kind of piggyback on it, saying like now you can have this stuff at nighttime, whereas instead of just limiting yourself to only having like a window of hours from say like 5 to 10 at nighttime or 5 to 11 at nighttime, something along those lines, you just kind of have your protein, your vegetables, and your fat during the day, and then you allot your carbs at nighttime.
Yeah, and so outside of the adherence thing, there is some kind of anecdotal stuff I've seen with
Okay.
it, with people using it. It does, the idea of like the lower carbohydrate during the day, that does work well for a lot of people. Simply from like a cognitive standpoint and just feeling,
For sure. Good point.
yeah, just feeling more alert and not as sluggish and not having as many ups and downs in blood sugar. And, so that's definitely not untrue. And I think there's still plenty of people out there that do the whole carbless breakfast.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no, not only that, but there's no problem with that.
No, not
by any stretch.
If you feel good, do it. It's fine.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I also find too that I found for anyone that was really allotting their carbs or asking if they could have carbs before bedtime, was like, not only does that for me, that really induced sleep for me. Like that was like having that meal either before bed or an hour before bed, that really kind of gave me enough food to put me to sleep. And I would almost give me a little bit of we'll call it a carb coma, and that really induced sleep, as opposed to people like that was one of the most dastardly and junk I don't even know what I would call it, methods out there saying no carbs. I made an Instagram post about that years ago. No carbs past 6, no carbs past 7. Like, why? Or don't eat past 5, 6, or 7 o'clock. What the F are you talking about? Like, where's the benefit to that? So not only now are you starving yourself at nighttime, go to bed hungry, and you tell me how crappy your sleep's gonna be.
Right.
Incredibly.
Yeah. So again, like, I tell people, really the way that we distribute, I always kind of look at the everything in tiers. So obviously we always start with calorie balance, and then we start with macros secondly, and then distribution third, right? So
Sure.
I can say, all right, in an ideal world, we might distribute things this way, but also what are your past experiences? How do you feel with certain layouts, and they might say, Coach, I just feel like I can't do a ton of carbs post workout when I'm more insulin sensitive, because I train in the morning and I go to work right afterwards and I can't be tired. Like,
I was going to say, and then they're falling asleep at their desk.
I just don't want to feel like I need to take a nap right when I get to work. I'm like, okay, that's fine. We'll make it a little more moderate carb. We'll do some intra-workout carbs, and we'll put more carbs at night. It's like, it's not that big of a deal at the end of the day. I mean, you have to be able to function and get through your day. So, but this carb backloading works around the premise for your typical average person that works during the day.
Yeah, it works during the day and then it goes to the gym at nighttime, per se.
Yeah, so it does work for a majority of people. There's a lot of flaws in the claims, though. Like I always kind of laugh at it's the same with IIYFM and even intermittent fasting to a small extent, because these people they're using these things as like a fat loss type of diet oftentimes, and they'll say, eat all the things that you want. He talks cakes and donuts and this and that. I said, you realize how quick your macros are going to be filled up when you eat cakes and donuts?
Oh my God. Like,
you're not going to get very much food.
Between what, a cookie and a donut, they want to talk. I think they're equal parts fat and carbs. And if you were to break that down, holy moly.
Yeah. Not only are you not going to be able to meet your macronutrient requirements unless you're doing something ridiculous like having cookies and drinking a protein shake.
Right.
But you're just you're gonna run out of macronutrients so quickly. And then, as Marty said, you're also going to end up pretty much devoid of any type of micronutrition at all.
And you're not going to be satiated at all.
Right. Your hunger. And that's another thing that I've seen is these types of these types of situations where people are doing that whole volume thing and doing
Yep.
lots of processed foods and this and that, they really start to teeter this line of disordered eating because because they're making this, it starts off as, let's see how much food I can fit in this meal, and then it becomes,
if it fits your mouth.
right, yeah, and then it's just like, and also these, you got to think of hunger signaling too. So your hunger signals are going to slowly adapt to these patterns. So some of these people, especially people that have prior issues with disordered eating, like Marty had mentioned, this is a terrible idea.
Yes.
It's a terrible idea because all that's going to happen is eventually you're just going to end up restricting during the day and binging. That's it.
And unfortunately the language on the website here, that's what it's really alluding to. It's almost looking like it's saying it's okay to be a binger, and that's not something I want to be really a proponent of. So when to use this diet, I wouldn't say use this diet during a cutting phase by any stretch. Would you?
Again, I probably wouldn't say that unless I just trust the person and I know they're very very stable. It's probably not going to be my choice. You know what? I could go out and say this pretty easily, is that for anyone that has to push pretty hard to get lean, I'm going to want the most stability at all times. I'm going to want pretty evenly fed, pretty no huge windows without eating where they feel like they have to eat their arm off when they get to eat again.
Let alone being a proponent of the cookies and donuts, right? Because as soon as you have one, I want to see someone. Yeah. I want to see someone have in their cupboard or their pantry 2 donuts and say, okay, I'm having 1.5 donuts with a protein shake.
Right. Yeah, especially when they're hungry. It's funny because I had this conversation with someone the other day about refeeds, and I was talking about my own refeeds and how I do this. Like, I get very restrictive in prep, and then I'll have these really big refeeds, and I have to be very careful because I get some like extreme cravings once I start refeeding.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I was okay. I was just hungry before, but I was all right. And then I start refeeding, and it's like, holy shit, the floodgates are open. So if I were to just eat junk in there, oh man, I'm not saying I couldn't control myself because I just don't put that stuff in my house, but you're just making it really unnecessarily tough.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
So so those are some times that you probably shouldn't use those types of diets, and I think that you could pretty much say that about any type of diet that has periods of extreme restriction. Not necessarily the protein sparing diet as much, that does have extreme restriction, but anything that has like eating windows.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? The eating window thing is where you get into trouble.
Yep. No, I'd agree with that for sure.
Yeah. So, carb backloading. I can't really think of any.
Well, the only other time I would say that this would not be an ideal diet would be if your digestion's already a little bit haywire, and then trying to throw a whole bunch of carbs at once at nighttime. Because let's be serious, if your digestion is a little bit skewed, we'll call it, that would usually be from a carbohydrate or a vegetable for the main part. Would you say?
Yeah,
that's where it's going to come from.
Carbs and veggies are the most common things.
Sure. That's what I mean. So now if we're having a window of nothing but carbs, let alone now we're advocating donuts and things like that too. That's, if anything, that's going to make you it's going to add to constipation. It's going to add to digestive sluggishness, and you're probably just not going to be able to function as well as you should.
Yeah, that's that goes for any of those, basically any of those diets. You're really asking for a hard time and
digestive havoc.
You know what? And how often do you hear on these types of diets where they kind of merge this IIYFM in there? What's their claim? They always say, "Oh, just get the minimum micronutrients and you're fine."
Oh my God.
Right?
Yeah.
They don't say jack shit about eating all these highly inflammatory foods constantly.
Yep.
And
Omega-3 to omega-6 to omega-9 balance, nothing
Yeah,
like that.
and they just don't say anything about that. And now let's take that to an even further extreme, and let's cram all that into a small window every day.
Yeah, good luck. I'm
Have
with you on
fun, you know.
that.
So
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's good.
yeah, so that's probably it for these two guys. Next time we will probably cover a couple more.
I don't see why not. I've got a couple
Yeah.
ideas in my head, but we'll have to keep them waiting for that one though. There, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Cool, man.
Well then, from Austin and Marty here at the Mind Body Broadcast, we will catch you next time.